Okay, welcome everyone to the Novice final of the Mystery BP event. The motion that stands before us today is, as the feminist movement, this House would actively oppose marriage. I call upon the Prime Minister Mario to open the case that stands in his name. Here,
Ladies and gentlemen, we don't think that we have institutionalized sexism anymore, but we think that we still have sexism at the level of perception. And we see that marriage in itself is the most important institution that actually keeps, the sexism going and going into this society. So today I'll have a few points. First of all, why we think that at the level of perception marriage is still sexist. Secondarily, why should the feminist movement actually do this? And thirdly, I'll talk about the emotional impact at the level of a woman that actually wants to get married and what goes on in her head when she actually plans on getting married and basically tying her life to a man for the rest of her life, right? First of all, why marriage? We think that, there's this kind of sexism at the level of perception in the sense in which we basically still perceive the role of the woman in most of the societies as being the one that should take care of the family. In the moment in which you actually want to get married as a woman, you assume the fact that you might want at some point to give up your career because, the man will do the job, will have his job and you will just take care of the children. You see that this is a very important thing because at the end of the day, even though we think you might not be his property anymore or anything like that, we still think that he has lots of leverage upon you and he's still in the superiority position in a marriage specifically. No, thank you. We think that we still have, even though we think that this doesn't happen anymore that often, we still have a lot of rural communities in which basically women are actually, no thank you, still abused because people see in the church a real they basically guide their life by the church, and we think that this is still a problem. But we don't think that we're necessarily going to talk about that. We're going to talk about more of the Western liberal democracies and what we can actually change in there. Now, we think that, as I said before, besides the fact that a woman, when she gets married, has to give up her name, we don't think that there's some institutionalized sexism other than that. But as I said before, at the level of perception, we think that we basically label people and we basically judge them if they're not getting married, for instance. If you meet a woman at 30 and suddenly you ask her, no thank you, you ask her if she's married and her answer is no, you suddenly say that, oh, I'm kind of sorry for that, you shouldn't be ashamed, there's still time if you want to change your mind and if you want to do anything. We think that that's the problem. The fact that you still judge women, no thank you. The fact that you still judge them for the decision and the choices that they make in their life, and the fact that, we as a society still perceive marriage and family that stands as marriage, no thank you, as the end goal of a life for both a woman and a man. We think that that's problematic, right? We think that the sole purpose of life shouldn't be today to get married, more so as a woman, no thank you, and give up all some things that you want to do in your life just because of that. Secondarily, why the feminist movement? We think that, first of all, we see that we have this perception and this huge opposition for the feminist movement today because they think that, the feminist movement doesn't have a purpose anymore. Because after the third and the fourth wave, they're basically just feminazis. We think that we need to change the perception of the population and actually, thank you. We need to actually show them that there's still a real problem that we need to fix. We're not just parading and going out naked on the streets to prove something because we want to be superior to men. We think that basically the feminist movement needs some redemption, and this is the way to get it. This is the way. This is the true problem that still exists, and we want to change that. And we want to show the feminist movement actually still fights for something. No, thank you. We think that people still think in the manner of which you still have to educate your children to if he's a guy, to be the head of the family, to be the leader. You're not going to tell him obviously to be dominant and basically abuse the woman, but you're still going to tell him that someday you might actually take the role of the leader. You definitely need to do that. No, thank you. We think that definitely organic change at this moment is too slow because we see that there is no organic change anymore because people keep these things under the carpet. They don't want to talk about it, as I said before. If you suddenly say that you don't want to get married, is this strange subject that you don't want to talk about because you think it's too personal, you might affect that person and you don't want to do anything. You want people to talk about it, and we think that this is the reason for which the feminist movement should actually do this, because we think that it was part of a conflict. And this is what we want. We want people to debate, and we want people to actually reach, like, you know, to have a strong opposition against marriage, to have a strong position for marriage and why this is important. We want people to actually once and for all decide upon what we want to do with this concept and with this institution and what it really matters in the 21st century. Because we think that it's like something that remained in the air, and we still think that's somewhat important and somewhat legal, and we should still do it, but we're not really sure why. Yes, though.
My question to you is, in Western liberal democracies, we do not have the problems which you said. Women are not actually ruling over, men are not ruling over women. Talk about this, please.
Okay, sure, but as I said before, you definitely, like, you know, give up some things when you want to get married. You definitely assume the fact that you are going to be like the woman in the family, and even if that's not the case, even if you want to have a career, we still think that you're perceived as, like, you know, the weak sex. You're still perceived as that has to be, like, you know, just there, but it's not that important. Now, let's just basically, we say that people are not necessarily willingly sexist at this time, but we think that they still do it. And we think that basically what we actually need to do, as I said before, is actually make them talk about it. Because we see that it's basically kept under a rug and nobody wants to talk about it because they think it's shameful, and we don't think that this is what should happen. No, thank you. Let's talk about the emotional impact for women and for the women that actually want to get married. Because let's make a little portrayal of these women, right? We think that they basically take, like, you know, a much bigger burden than the men in the moment in which they want to get married, because they realize that someday they might have to give up something, and if they don't want to give up their career, let's say to raise children, they're going to be frowned upon. People are going to judge them, and we think that women generally today don't necessarily want to assume that, right? We think that even if they want to assume that, they're still not going to talk openly about it. They might have a little fight about it, but we think that it's really important that women should actually talk about this stuff in the open society, not only inside the family after they get married. We think there's a really big pressure put on the women before they get married, much more bigger than the men, because we think that, you know, the man is the one that is actually able to, like, get the divorce if he wants. But on the other hand, we see that basically women are in the position in which they are still, like, you know, somewhat inferior, because they assume a lot of stuff and they are willing to give a lot of stuff up in the moment in which they get married. And we think that that's wrong. We think that women should not, you know, believe themselves that they are willing and are meant to actually give up a lot of stuff in the moment in which they get married. And we think that that's wrong. We think that, as I said before, the only way to actually change this stuff is to actually have an open conflict about it. And what will happen afterwards? We think that, you know, as I said before, we'll have a stronger position as the church that sees the, like, you know, basically like family and itself marriage as the whole concept and the whole purpose of life, and that might change and that might not change, but we think that the most important thing is to show the world that, you know, the feminist movement still has something to fight for, and secondarily that, you know, we can still change some things, and we can still, like, you know, make women realize that there was something in our society, even if we're talking about rural communities or not. And for all of these reasons, we think that because we still have sexism at the level of perception in today's society, we need to change that now, and we need to give the feminist movement a purpose, and for all these reasons.
I thank that speaker for his speech and call upon Alexandru to open the case for first opposition.
1 second, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, what First Prop failed to do today is actually realize how important marriage actually is in today's society, how intrinsic it is to the idea of family, and the fact that the perception over the feminist movement would change horribly and would have horrible backlash and repercussions when it will actually end up in their detriment, whatever the reasons might be. And we think that they completely missed. They try to, you know, tell us that the feminist movement should take a direction and show us that we're still doing stuff, but this is way too extreme. Okay, so I'll have 4 points of rebuttal. And that's what Mario talked about, and then I'll have 2 points of constructive. First of all, why marriage is actually a great mechanism for women, and B, so point number 2, why the backlash is actually in the detriment of the feminist movement. Okay, so Mario told us that marriage is still sexist in the world of today, and we're somehow going. It has a social image attached to the image of housewives and all that. Well, you know, the feminist movement has removed all of that along the course of a lot of years. You don't really think, when you think marriage, you don't really think a housewife anymore. You think,
good job.
No, thank you, no. People don't imagine that sort of family anymore. That's a stereotype that's even frowned upon and even laughed about, ladies and gentlemen. It's definitely not the case in 2015. It's definitely not sexist in the perception of women. They also told us that today, for both men and women, we still judge people if they're not married, and it shouldn't be perceived as an endgame. But first of all, they have failed to tell us why exactly the family shouldn't be perceived as an endgame. And what we tell you today is that it's not about marriage itself that's the end goal or ultimate purpose of life, but it's about procreation, ladies and gentlemen. It's about having children. Yeah, and that's definitely going to be, no thank you, the end goal for most people, because you know that's kind of the purpose of mammals, to procreate and perpetuate the species and all that. Don't you agree, Mike?
Isn't that like the rhetorics of the, you know, like the church just saying that, you know, only a man and a woman can have a family because they can procreate? Is that like, you know, not sexist and not like, you know, worth changing?
Okay. Why exactly does this not apply to men? Like, how exactly is this, you know, not, how is this different from two men adopting a children and having the ultimate goal of having a family? Marriage is not necessarily about two people of different sexes, and I don't see why this is a problem. We don't think that we should remove, and we should not judge people if they're married. We also judge people if they, you know, do a lot of things. We don't see why this specific norm this specific norm should be changed in any way. And yeah, you're definitely not going to achieve anything necessarily good for anyone if you stop judging this. They have proved us no positive impact whatsoever from this, except that, you know, people will be less judged, and somehow that's desirable. Anyway. Going to the second point, and the fact that the feminist movement needs a direction and still show that it's relevant. We don't want to, the feminist movement, and this will be, I will actually talk about this more in my second point of constructive, about how this is hugely extreme, and we do not want to take the burden of this, you know, actively opposing something that is so intrinsically the foundation of the family in our society. No, thank you. And they also told us that we have to spark debate. But they never told us why this is important. I mean, why should we even question marriage, and what's the advantage? They've never really proved to me why it would be great to question marriage in itself, and why this is why questioning marriage will actually bring any benefits to both men or women, or yeah, whatever they were doing at this point. They were like, yeah, debate about stuff is good. We agree. That's why we're all here. But we see absolutely no relevance to this point. Yeah.
Since like, you know, the feminist movement is perceived as being like, you know, first of all useless, second of all feminazis, why not, you know, like embrace the public perception, take a hard stance and actually try to change something?
Because you lose absolutely all the credit. I'll talk about that in my next review. And they also told us that we have to change the perception of women that don't want to sacrifice their careers for a family and marriage and all that. But, ladies and gentlemen, instead of trying to eliminate marriage itself, what the feminist movement should actually do in this case is, I don't know, promote some, or actively promote measures like forcing men to take parental stay, or whatever you call it, and, you know, making them raise their children equally, and not cut marriage itself. You're not really fixing the problem, you're just putting it under a carpet and pretending it doesn't exist like this, because eliminate effectively all this mechanism of that does have its benefits, just because we think that we cannot actually deal with the problem. No, thank you, ego. Okay, so going into my constructive. Whoa. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about how this has horrible backlash, ladies and gentlemen. What we see today is that marriage is a social construct intrinsic to the family, and that the perception of the people is that it's, you know, it's just something that you take, you don't question, and it's normal, ladies and gentlemen. Taking this stance of actively opposing marriage would just discredit the feminist movement to the skies, ladies and gentlemen. It would just lose all the credibility. It would be extremely feminazis, and you know, people would just go, okay, the feminist movement has just gone totally insane. We should stop listening to what they say altogether because they're just cuckoo. We don't want that, ladies and gentlemen. We still want the feminist movement to be relevant, but rationally relevant, ladies and gentlemen, not proposing stuff that would be, even if properly argumented, people are not necessarily open to that, and they will just perceive it as too hard of a stance, too extreme of a stance, and would actually discredit them to the point that they will actually be useless. So, for all of these reasons, I beg you to oppose.
I thank the speaker and call upon Daria to further the case for first proposition.
Mr. Speaker, we believe that in a moment when you come and say that you don't want to get married, you don't want to have children, people come and tell you that, don't worry, but it's okay, you still have time to change your mind. You still have time to realize that your choice is wrong. And we believe that this is happening at this moment in the Western liberal democracies. And it's hypocritical to say today that we have solved the problem of equality. That is exactly the main issue, that we think that we solved it and we're not talking about these problems anymore, right? So in my speech, I will have rebuttal points. I will talk about, again, about the superficial changes, about the feminist movement, about my extension, which will have the three main points. I'll tell you about them when I will go there. So we see that the rebuttal to our case was so superficial, because we heard that, you know, marriage is important because marriage is important. You know, no, we see that exactly as Jukta said, marriage is a social contract. Marriage in itself isn't important, because we see that we only made marriage to have an easier life, to have an easier legal life, to say so. Because, you know, marriage in itself doesn't bring you this, doesn't bring you the fulfillment, the spiritual fulfillment in itself, the unity of a man and a woman, the man and the man, and so on and so forth, is bringing you that. But in our society, we perceive it as only the marriage that is only marriage that is bringing you this actual fulfillment, right? We also heard that, you know, we actually removed all the problems by now, you know, because we say that we're equal, so that means we're equal. We see that exactly because we're not talking about it, and when we think that we are equal in this society, we still have the problem at the level of perception, at the level of legacy, and what we leave behind, what we leave to our children, and how are we educating our children in our society, and how is that so? We see that even though we don't realize, we will tell our girls that, you know, you need that one of your end goals is to find a man and is to get married. We believe that that is intrinsically wrong. You will teach your little boy not to, you know, be sensitive and so on and so forth. You will tell him that, you know, you need to be strong, because one day you'll need to get married and be the leader of your family. You know, we believe that, again, this is wrong. Also, we heard we again on this point of family is important, because, you know, and marriage, family only means marriage, and, you know, this was their whole point. And I've already explained to you, and I will explain also in my argument how that is not actually true. Okay, so let's go to our
before that.
Exactly, because as we told you, in our society, the changes that are made are superficial. How so? We see that we still have labeling, as I told you, because in the moment when you're a woman and you choose to do things that aren't exactly in the mind of the society that perceive things to be normal, such as such as getting married at a certain age, such as having a child at a certain age, such as staying with your child and sacrificing your career for your child, and so on and so forth. We believe that yes, we still have this in our society, and we think that we don't have them, but we still have them, and that is exactly the problem, that we choose to hide all this under the rug, exactly as Mario told us. So let's talk about the feminist movement and why we need to change something in our rhetorics, and why is it so beneficial for the feminist movement. We see that today the feminist movement is divided. We see that exactly because the society thinks that we have reached this level of equality, we no longer actually need the feminist movement, and we no longer have a purpose with it. And we see that we have all these sectors that are divided in the feminist movement, as such as feminazis and so on and so forth. We believe that in the moment when we actually have a cohesive stance, a hard stance, which is still in the society that we still haven't reached this point of equality in our life, and we still need to have a progress in it. We see that only in that moment we will actually spark a conflict, spark a debate, or so on and so forth, and in that point actually raise awareness by the fact that we are not in the we haven't actually reached the equality that we want. And we believe that yes, marriage is the key of this, exactly because we're talking about the unity of a man and a woman, exactly because we are talking about everything that the woman requires in order to do so, and the man requires, and so on and so forth. So this is basically the focus point. The focus point of what actually gender equality is all about. So let's get into the extension, right? Because
before that,
yes.
So in your world, people won't be telling their children, "Oh, you have to be strong to get into marriage." They'll tell their children, "You have to be strong and powerful to get into couples," right?
No, they won't tell that because you erase this marriage idea and this marriage act, and the only moment when you actually promote the idea of leadership and so on and so forth is when you have these labels of wife and husband, this final step, because because we see that this marriage thing, what is happening is that is very you cannot go out. It is very permanent. Okay, it is very permanent. That was the point. Okay. So let's talk about what family actually means, because we see that family doesn't mean marriage. Marriage is a social construct in itself, which in our society we see that people don't feel the need anymore for it. Don't feel the need for an institutional level of fulfillment. We see that a lot of people choose to build their families only upon their relationship, upon their love, their love, and build it like that, and educate their children in this way, exactly because we do not need these labels in our society. So let's talk about what happens afterwards. What happens afterwards? We actually promote this idea that this is wrong. When we have the debates, we have the conflicts, and so on and so forth. We see that we actually shift the paradigm, and in that moment when you actually shift the paradigm and realize that marriage isn't that important in our society, and you see that you don't need that in order to be you don't need that in order to be fulfilled, in order to have a good life. In that moment, you can actually stop this idea of teaching your children that the end goal of your life, that the end goal is to have this marriage. In that moment, you can actually make your kids and make yourself think that in your life, career is important, that other values are more important than the social construct that isn't actually needed in our society, exactly because we can easily replace it only with the relationship in itself. So at the end of the day, we beg you to propose a motion.
Thank you for your speech, and I call upon Adelina to continue the case for first opposition.
don't really know the context in which the team opposition was born, but we think that it was a wrong grounding of the motion. My mom told me, get up, learn, and have a career. She never taught me to get up and have children and marry a husband. We think that we have reached a reasonable level of social development. We have reached a reasonable level that still needs some has some issues and needs some fixes. But we think that such an extreme stance would only create a social backlash. Therefore, I will have a couple of points of rebuttal, and then I'm going to move on into resustaining my extension, which was never really tackled by the team opposition. Now, they told us about the fact that women sacrifice their career to the men. Now, the question is, isn't this more about the institutional problem regarding the maternity leave and paternity leave, which is not that much allowed, or this issue wasn't fixed? They never tackled that point. Now, they also talked about that we label, especially women, because they're not married and they don't want to be married. We have a couple of responses to that. We also judge men that are not married at the age of 40. We also judge boys that are virgins at the age of 20. We think that the reason why we judge people, it is because this is the oldest value of society, and therefore people expect from you to have children and to have build a family, because this is the oldest value that we have preserved up to this point. Now, why the feminist movement, they told us? They told us that we need to actually show them that there is still a problem. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we agree, but we think that regarding the context in which the feminist movement is situated up until this point, where we see that it is a misportrayal of the feminist movement, it is a constant association with the feminist Nazis, and people undermine the credibility of the feminist movement. We believe that such an extreme stance would only create a backlash to the society, and therefore they never tackled that point. Moreover, they talked about this organic change that won't work. Now we see that up until this point, this extreme measure didn't work. We see that people that feminist movement which adopted some measures that were reasonable and accepted by society, those were the measures that actually worked, not such an extreme measure. Now, moreover, they talked about how they want debate. They want debate by opposing the value that was promoted by religion, by society, only to have debate. We think that it is not a measure worth having. Moreover, they talked about, no, thank you, they talked about the marriage as being an easier legal way to live. Exactly. We don't think that marriage was created in the first place to be a way in which men would control women, but marriage was the reflection and the mirror of the patriarchal society in which we lived up until this point. We believe that the feminists and all these waves of feminists have reached their goals into changing the paradigm under which we live, and we have reached a certain equality. Regarding the second wave and the third wave wanted to reach equality among relationships between men and women, among equality at the workplace. We think that if they propose this measure, they only validate the fact that the feminist movement and all the waves that have been up to this point were not effective, and we think this is a flawed premise. Moreover, they portray this social construct as being a factor of sexism. We think this is also a flawed premise, because this social construct is a social construct because it is the reflection of the society in which they live. Moreover, we think, and this is where I'm getting into my constructive part, we think that this marriage, it gives the woman the opportunity to actually challenge the basic values of society. We think that we think that they should change the paradigm. They should change the premise of the discussion, not to act in a handoff situation. We can't actually change our stance into the marriage, so we're opposing it. We can't actually make men to value us as being equal in the relationship, so we're opposing it. We think think that they're very dismissive and they're very dismissive stance regarding this issue. This is sending the message that we're not capable of achieving equality among men and women, that we're not capable of achieving a decent equality or an absolute equality among family. I'll take you in a second, sir, and this is why we should abolish it. But why am I wrong?
And you're sort of counter-propping that said, you know, let's force men to take like paternity test is somehow giving legitimacy to the feminist movement and saying that, you know, we can't deal with stuff ourselves, so we have to force you to do something to respect us.
We don't think that, you know, when we want to reach equality among marriage, we will stand for this maternity and paternity equality. But in the moment in which we're opposing family, we have no reason for why we should ask that. We think that it is an institutional problem, not a social problem. In the moment in which you're contradicting the basic values of our society, you're contradicting the nuclear family on which the society was built, we think it won't reach the point and it will only create a backlash. Now, there is no strategic interest, as I said, for the feminist movement to actually adopt this stance, because it undermines the credibility of the feminist movement. They should change the actual premise of the discussion. They should militate for equality, not negate the core values of the society. They should militate for equality at the workplace. But they should keep the values of the society, because they can tackle that, because they can change the patriarchal society and change it into a society of equality. A society of equality will reflect a family in which equality is, and will reflect equality at the workplace, and will reflect equality overall. So that being said, I rest my case.
I thank the speaker for her speech and call upon Vojka to open the second half of this debate for side proposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, a while ago, women could not vote. And then we changed the paradigm. Then we contradicted the society from its very basic points of view. Everything that stands the teen government today is we are so scared of upsetting someone. But in order to make change, you cannot please everyone, but rather try to please the ones that are important to please, right? So before I go into my substantive, I will have a few points of advice. First of all, they said it is important for the family. What we're saying is, this is the sick mentality that marriage has been promoting. The fact that you need to be in a marriage to have a family. We believe that is wrong, and that puts pressure on women that do not have a husband, because, for example, they were left or something, but do have a baby. We believe that it is very unfair to say to those women, no, you do not belong to this society, no, you should be judged. Moreover, they said, well, yes, procreation, that's an important thing for us. We say, what is this? The last century. We believe that that is not anymore the purpose of people, and even if it was, we shouldn't pressure people into making it the purpose. If they do not want procreation, if they do not want to marry someone, they shouldn't be obliged to do so. Right, next point. They said, well, we will be perceived as neo-Nazis. And we say, yes, as feminist Nazis. Okay, right. We believe that, first of all, that is not necessarily a problem, because everything the feminist movement will do, there will be some people judging it because they're just going to hate on it. And even if that would be a problem, we're not doing this for the perception of the people that judge women. We are doing it for the women themselves and for liberating them, right? And now they said, well, we're scared of showing that we have failed. And we believe that no, we shouldn't be scared of showing that we have failed to repair this very sick society. We should be saying, yes, there is something wrong about the society and we don't know how to fix it. Here's another solution. Change the world with us. Right, on that point. No, thank you. Now, we believe that there is another problem. They said, it is important because you are perceived as a wife and he is perceived as a husband. We say that that is very wrong. We say that actually takes from the individuality of people, saying, I am a wife, I'm not a woman. You are a woman, not just a wife, not just a mother. You are more than that, right? And we believe that it is very important that we respect that, right? And we believe that, well, they said this is how society was constructed. We believe that society was constructed basically by two things, right? The church pushing in with all of those pressures that women should be in this place and not in that place. That, you know what, it is important for your God to marry someone else. And we believe that that in itself is actually a society that we do not want anymore. We want this society to develop from the state, that was created by the church and by certain legal advantages whatsoever. Moreover, we believe that when you are in a married couple, because they ask in a POI, what is the difference between a couple and a married couple? We believe that, first of all, there's a certain pressure when you're married to make that marriage work very well. And if you're failing to do that, if you somehow manage to divorce or something, you will be rather criticized and again be put in a corner and blamed. Moreover, let's talk about my extension, right? Because I have a lot of material. Yes, please.
Can you explain us why the LGBTQ movement actually militates for marriage, marriage rights?
We believe that that is a sign that marriage does not actually mean equality. We believe that gay people do not actually receive marriage, therefore it actually represents inequality, and feminist movement stands for equality between all people, not just for women, right? So we believe that that is important. Now back to my speech. We believe that, as the first bench said, marriage is right now a goal. And what is the problem with this? We see that the fact that I am pressured into doing this makes me feel as an individual bad for myself that I'm not reaching this goal. And they said, no, it's not anymore a goal. My mother doesn't pressure me into doing this. Yes, maybe your mother doesn't, but there's a lot of other families, in example, in Asia, right, that push for their parents, for their kids to actually marry and make from this a specific goal in their life. And you know what? If I want to be a cat lady, I shouldn't be blamed for that. We believe that that is rather sick. And itself, the way that people judge single men and single women after a certain age is very sexist. Why? Because if I'm a single woman, I am doomed to die alone. But if I'm a single man, I'm a cool bachelor. And you know what? Maybe men do not want to be perceived like the cool bachelor. Maybe they do want to be perceived also as alone. And we believe that, at least for the guy that has been pressured from his parents, right, because he lives in a classical family, that he has to marry even though, for example, he's gay or whatever. We believe that even for that person, we should be applying this motion. And it's very, very important. Now, we believe that this is the next point of my extension. We believe that in itself, it takes from the individuality. Marrying someone in itself makes you less you and more a couple. And we believe that's not very good for the feminist movement. Why? Because in itself, the fact that you have to take the name of the man that you're marrying is a proof that you are not anymore, you're less yourself. And we believe that that is not necessarily something that we want. We want people to be able to develop. And when you're in a marriage that puts pressure on you to keep it legally and functioning, because it's very difficult to divorce, for example, we believe that every single decision you're going to make is going to be influenced by the fact that you are married. And we don't want that, because when you're in a couple, it's so much easier, in a simple couple that's not married, it's so much easier taking decisions by yourself because you are not legally pressured to make this work and you are not pressured by the society. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that, for all those reasons, we believe that feminist movement, which fights for individuality and equality, should not anymore promote this institution that actually cuts from your power of decision as a woman or as a man, cuts from your individuality and puts pressure on people to marry, to have kids. You know what? It's my life. I can do whatever I want with it. You shouldn't be pressuring me into anything. For all of those reasons, please vote the motion.
Thank you for your speech, and I call upon Ciprian to extend the case for side opposition.
before getting into my points, my 2 points of rebuttal and my extension about the feminist movement and how this would bring a massive backlash when it comes to other minority groups and when it comes to actually what they're opposing when they say we're opposing marriage, let's clarify what both sides had to prove. What the government had to prove to us today is not exactly why they would oppose marriages in which women are discriminated, by why they would oppose all types of marriages, even marriages in which women are not discriminated, even marriages in which women are treated equally. Second of all, we believe that all of the backlash which they have brought us today is still going to exist, because first of all, the motion is targeting feminists which would oppose this. It is not targeting the women which is seeing in the countryside and does not understand this. It is not targeting that at all. So that woman would still get married. And even if we, in some way, that woman would still not get married because something would happen, we believe that they would be in other types of unions and they would be forced to get in unions with men in these cases in which you talked about, and that would be detrimental as well. Now, also, furthermore, they have to prove to us today why oppose marriage and not inequality and sexism within marriage, and we believe that they have failed in doing that. They have failed in proving to us today why they would oppose this specifically. Now, getting into my 2 points of rebuttal, they told us that they're going to be judged, and probably because they are going to choose not to get married because right now in the status quo they choose not to get married. Well, in the moment in which an individual chooses not to get married, that individual is going to be judged. In the moment in which you're talking about a general truth which should apply to all feminists, that all feminists know should oppose marriage, we believe that in that moment you're bringing a bigger backlash because you're saying that it is an absolute truth that all feminists should oppose this. And we believe that you're bringing more judgment in this case than you're bringing in the moment in which one individual is opposing this. No. Second of all, no. Giving up on some things. First of all, we believe that what I have told us that you have to give up on, like income and having a career is not entirely true. In Western liberal democracies, in general, women are both married and can work at the same time. A lot of women are having careers, are having political careers, are having all sorts of careers. What is realistically to be told is that in the moment in which you get married, you give up on some things, which are generally, you have to have a consensus with that person when it comes to how you spend things. And we believe that what is happening is that if you choose as an individual, as a feminist, that it is worth giving up on some of these things and reaching a consensus from an equal point of view with my partner, we believe that if you think that that is better and that is what you're interested in, you should be able to choose this, and you should not have to oppose this if for you it is better like this. Second of all, we believe that if for some feminists this is okay, and if they are approving with this, they should be able to do it. We believe that at the same time, even if we were to approve that women are giving it something on some things, as I have told you, men have to give on some things as well. Therefore, it is not sexist. Therefore, it is not against feminists. Now, also, we believe that No, thank you. We believe that the institution of marriage has changed. We believe that all Voika's expansion about having to give up on your name and stuff like that is not actually staying up, because at the end of the day, right now you can choose to keep your own name, you can choose to have all of this. So we believe that what you're telling us about how it is sexist, and so even if we were to approve with that, we believe that how we have changed the institution of marriage from having an oppressed woman who doesn't have the right to vote, we should change that as well, rather than disagreeing with marriage. Now, my own constructive, no. We're talking about, first of all, the image of marriage and how they're denigrating it, and then the image of feminists, and we're going to talk about a proactive choice against marriage and how this is going to affect the movement in itself. Then we're going to look at why you oppose, what happens in the moment in which you oppose marriage and what you're intrinsically opposing. First of all, image of marriage. We believe that in the moment in which you oppose this, the entire paradigm in which you oppose it is because women are oppressed, you are intrinsically and tacitly saying that all types of marriages and that marriage in general is oppressive towards women, which is intrinsically not true. No. We believe that not all types of marriage are oppressive of women, and we believe that this is not general truth for all of the people. Now, second point, proactive choice against marriage. Now, we believe that what is happening is that they choose not to, in some cases, they are saying that they choose not to be married because they think that marriage is a bad thing, they think that marriage is oppressive towards women. Now, we think that this brings some certain detriments, because you're not opposing only marriage between women and men, you're opposing marriage between man and man and women and women. And we would have liked to get an analysis on exactly why the feminist movement should oppose that as well. Because in the moment in which you oppose marriage intrinsically, we believe that you're having a backlash from all of these minorities. No. know, which are militating for marriage and for. Now, second of all, we believe that when you talk about people which are right now in the marriage and you're telling them you should oppose marriage because you know marriage is oppressive towards women, we believe that in that moment you're telling them it is wrong for you to choose this because as a woman because this is oppressive towards you. And this is how you're bringing a backlash. This is how you're bringing more harm to the feminist movement because you're telling that woman that they should not get married at any point. And we believe that for all of these reasons this is not intrinsically true because women can choose and can choose the legal partnership in which you go to. And now coming back to the motion which is targeting feminists, of course that no feminist in no point at all would probably get in a marriage which is oppressive towards her. No, we believe that feminists, because they uphold these principles, they would normally get in marriages where they're not oppressed, where they can be equal, where they have a word, no thank you, where they have a word to say and so on and so forth. Now, you oppose all things which marriage means. What does marriage mean? Marriage means in general an education, a comfort zone for the society. And marriage means intrinsically the nucleus of society which is family. In the moment in which you oppose marriage, we believe that that is detrimental. Why? Because people like having social recognition for what you're doing. They like having social recognition for being part of a particular group. And in this context, you're part of a marriage, of a family, which is a certain group for them. It brings them closure, and it brings them the possibility to be in that group and feel closure. And we find nothing bad with that. We think that a feminist should not oppose getting closure from being and loving someone. Now, second of all, we believe that in the moment in which you're talking about marriage, you're talking about an institution which gives you certain rights and certain obligations. We believe that it is detrimental for women to oppose that because at the end of the day, if marriage would not be there at all, feminists who are in a partnership with men, when it comes to divorcing that man, if there is the case, they would not be capable to show that they have contributed to the family as well. All they have achieved together in the case of a divorce would not be shared. And we believe that this is what marriage is bringing. It is bringing equality to women because they can prove that they have contributed to the family as well, because they can contribute, because they can prove that yes, they can be equal to men and that men and women can live together in a cohesive stance. So for all of these reasons, we believe that the motion does not pass today.
I thank the speaker for his speech and call upon Cosmin to sum up this debate for side proposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the opening government defined very, very well, we believe today that we need to unite and bring more coherence into the feminist movement because we today believe the fact that we do not have enough equality within the society. My speech is going to focus mainly on the concept of marriage and how the feminist movement, by not opposing the marriage, is basically legitimizing a social construct that is deeply patronizing in itself, and I'm going to argue about this more in my extension. But before that, let's get what was on the first bench, what the closing opposition brought on the table, and after that, my constructive. Let's see. We believe today that throughout the history, debate has led to progress, to progressist movements, and so on. We believe today that you need to question a specific thing, in this case marriage, in order to sparkle a debate. We believe today that it is crucial for the feminist movement to question this into sparkling a debate from the society and with them on the opposite side in order to basically get some more equality into today's society. And now let's answer the question that Leon asked me before about why is this motion about marriage between a man and a woman. We believe today that there are two reasons. This is mostly because the religious background which is in discussion. We believe today that the thing that most affected the feminist movement was the specific religious background which is present only in this marriage between a man and a woman. On the second point, we see today that for the LGBT community, we have a specific thing that is specifically distinguished, which is called civil partnership, which is not especially called a marriage. We believe today that there is a difference, and that is the reason today why we should argue about opposing the marriage between a specific man and a specific woman. No, thank you. And what we believe today, that thing with the basic value of society that is marriage, we believe today that a family does not need a marriage to be a family. We believe today that we can have a family by other means than marriage as well. I'm going to review this more on my extension. And let's talk about now the individual decision which is judged. We believe today that, as Leon said, if the feminist movement will take such a strong stance against marriage, we believe today that they should be determined into doing this. We have never seen an activist group, either we are talking about Afro-American people, either we are talking about the LGBT community or the feminist movement, that need to have a coherent stance throughout the years in the first place, and on the second point, to basically have a lot of determination, because up to a certain point, you basically need to ignore what the backlash of the society is targeting towards you. And we believe today that the feminist movement cannot achieve by any means equality if they care so much about how this at an individual level, how this decision is going to be judged by the rest of society. And now let's talk about the image of marriage. And we believe today that this motion, as the closing opposition said, is not particularly about oppression. Today is more about accepting and legitimizing this specific social construct that has been built on deeply patronizing premises. And now I'm going into my constructive note, thank you, which is mostly about how this social construction is further legitimized by the feminist movement if we are not approving this motion. Let's see what was the primary role of marriage. The primary role of marriage, in our opinion, was first, procreation. Second was basically raising a child. After procreating, you need to give a specific education to that child, right? Well, if I will manage to prove to you until the end of the match that the benefits that marriage gives us, we can achieve through other means, and there are some inherent harms that only the marriage can bring in the society, we are going to win this debate. And let's talk about benefits and how can we achieve this thing otherwise. We can achieve procreation in today's society by a lot of ways. We have seen that we have sperm banks when mothers can exist single mothers by not having to procreate with a specific man, they would have to marry further. And on the second point about education, we have seen that since the 1980s there were children that were perfectly educated and with a couple of moral values after having same-sex parents. We believe today that talking about this marriage between a man and a woman and making it just, let's say, exclusive for giving an education to a child and procreation of the species, we believe today that this is not going to help anyone. Go.
Exactly, because we have other means of achieving what people want and what people desire, why we would still oppose marriage.
Very good point. And now I'm going to go to the fact that what are the inherent disadvantages of this? We have seen the fact that this is a social construct and a paradigm which is promoted through marriage that is inherently patronizing. How is that? Well, let's see the first fact that, as Volta said, marriage was created throughout the religious background, right? It was the fact that a specific man wanted his God to give your blessing into that specific thing. Well, what's actually happening is that we have seen throughout the history, the religion has been the biggest source of sexism in the society and discrimination, on the first point. And on the second point, we have seen the fact that this was based on extremely patronizing premises. This was based on the premise that, you know, the woman should take care of the child, all those things that we hear when you are married at the church and you have to say all those things that I will never abandon you, and so on. We believe today that these are the big patronizing premises that the marriage was based upon in the first place. What we believe today, it is extremely important for the feminist movement is to make a step forward. In the sense of having a coherent stance. If the feminist movement condemned being institutionally sexist, being openly sexist, in the last decades, we believe today that this is the next step which will bring coherence and at the same time will bring credibility to question a social construct that has been patronizing and discriminatory for women for almost 2,000 years. And at the end of the day, we have seen the fact that this clearly the government side has won this debate because the operating government really showed you how we are really need to get the feminist movement united by these things. And on the second point, we showed you how the concept of marriage is in itself patronizing and discriminatory towards the woman. For all those reasons today, I beg you to propose the motion.
upon Letizia to sum up this debate for side opposition and as a whole.
We have a problem with the sexism inside the marriage. Therefore, we shouldn't oppose the sexism and the perception, but we should actually oppose the entire umbrella under which the most perception and the most abuses happen, which is the marriage. Our problem is that the feminist movement, where it fails to bring a change, is not fighting for the perception and for the marriages that actually go wrong and are abused, but put under the same umbrella the marriages that are functional, the marriages that promote equality, actively promote equality, such as same-sex marriages, where you cannot say about gender stereotypes or stuff like that. They actively choose to oppose even that kind of marriage. We believe that in the sense of, choosing perception, changing perception, the perceptions that they are changing are nonetheless the society's perception, because if there is sexism inside the society, just because you're bashing the marriage is not going to mean that you're bashing sexism intrinsically. The perception that they are changing is not the, man perception when it comes to how to treat a woman. The perception that they are changing is the political capital that the feminist movement could have won, but if they are taking this measure, they are actually cutting their possibilities to do that. Now, I'm going to talk on many points. First of all, I'm going to show you what is the problem with the feminist movement and why exactly this problem with losing political capital is pretty relevant when it comes to actually fighting for women who are abused and fighting for creating a context inside these marriages for equality, which was exactly the purpose of the feminist movement. Then I'm going to show you why opposing marriage is just useless. Now, first of all, what is the problem with the feminist movement? Now, we believe that what they are doing is misportraying the images or the image of marriages, right? We believe that what they are doing exactly through this measure is silently agreeing with the stereotypical marriages and extrapolating that and actually bringing the image that all the marriages are stereotypical and are filled with gender roles. We believe that this does more harm than good for simply saying that, attacking people who are having a simply good relation. Second of all, we are saying that in a moment in which you're so absurd on getting the, on actually attacking those people who have a nice relationship or attacking marriage in general, you kind of lose political capital. Why exactly? Because you're attacking the institution of marriage, you're attacking mainly the legal benefits that those people have when they are getting married, you're basically attacking the religious marriage, and you're kind of upsetting everyone. And we believe that, the feminist movement has done kind of bad things in the past, and we believe that the worst thing that they could do is coming out and being extremist again when it comes to their policies. Now, we believe that in the moment in which they generalize, they mainly bring a general truth when it comes to marriage, right? If their problem is that right now marriage is perceived as being marriage is sexist, what you're doing by imposing this measure is actually creating a general truth under which the feminists should actually say that marriage is something bad, under which feminists should never agree to give their consent and to actually have a life with a partner, because somehow that is bad and somehow always that leads to sexism. We believe that that's simply absurd and simply not happening in the society. And we believe that why this is extremely relevant when it comes to the political capital is because we want to gain political capital as the feminist movement. For who do we want to gain political capital? We want to gain political capital exactly for the marriages that they are talking about. We want this feminist movement to actually, in a second, ma'am, fight for those marriages in which women are being abused. And I'm going to explain you the mechanism in a second. Go.
Saying that we shouldn't oppose marriage because there are some healthy couples that are happy with this. It's like saying we should oppose gay marriage because there are some gay people that do not want to get married.
Saying that we should oppose marriage because in the 21st century there are some ruler
couples that have inequality inside marriage and there are some sexism there is as absurd as we said. But moreover, we never said that this is the only reason why we should oppose that. We said that we should oppose that because it goes beneath what makes people intrinsically happy, as I'm going to expand on my last point. We believe that not the fact that, there is sexism and there are reminiscence of a patriarchal society makes people happy being married, but the fact that they like having a social status. But more on that later on. No, thank you. Okay, so mainly losing political capital is bad. Why exactly? Because by doing that, they are cutting their roots of actually empowering women inside the marriage. They are cutting their roots of actually showing the fact that women have the possibility of being different, have the possibility of being outstanding when it comes to marriages. Just because they are making a statement under which they are putting all the women, they are just losing their credibility for further actions. And by further actions, we're actually saying that sexism can be changed, right? Sexism was changed up until now, and we believe that sexism could be changed without that measure. How exactly? By the feminist movement actually putting in the spotlight that not marriage is the problem, but the sexism is the problem. If they want to stigmatize something in the society, not the marriage is the one to be stigmatized, but the sexism is the one who should be stigmatized. Yes, Mario.
We're basically not, opposing the definition of a family, but opposing the institution of marriage that creates the general perception of discrimination.
No, the problem is that you're opposing the institution of marriage instead of opposing what's happening inside the marriage. You're missing some steps, guys. You're missing the steps in which men are sexist, therefore the marriage is abusive when it comes to women, to marriage is abusive, therefore we should just oppose it, not take care of the perception inside the marriage. Now, last point about not giving credit of what's happening inside the family. And we believe that this is a pretty relevant thing, right? Because even in the areas where women are still perceived as just mothers, we believe that women have a chance to stand out inside marriage. In the moment in which you're disconsidering the marriage as a whole, what happens is that you're taking away the credits of that woman who has worked, who had a career, and who succeeded, and also had the child, right? Why exactly? Because you're sending the message that all of those just don't matter. Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, we believe that the feminist movement should actually try to solve the sexism, not just cut an umbrella that doesn't have anything to do with it. Thank you.
Oh,